the order of the day is that I will call us to order, and then later I will call for an adjournment, but, so I'm gonna call us to order, and then we will yield the agenda to be executed by our town administrator who has planned the workshop, and only if we need to have a vote or whatever, she'll yield back to me and I'll call for the vote, but I don't think that will be few and far between. So we are in order, and Heather, I want to thank you for getting this together for us, and I'm sure it will be a very informative workshop, so.
Well, we'll see, and we'll see how much of it we get through. I tried to put some time limits on some different things, but I don't know that we'll need all of that time. There's Mr. Russell.
Hello.
Hey,
I don't know that we'll need all of that time. I did want to say, in the internal strategic planning part, number 4,
You can have all you
I
want.
think we can, Sunday.
I'm starting.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I didn't say that.
I'll split it.
Bring
with
everybody
you.
to first.
That's okay, that's number 4. Okay.
Number 4, I think we can probably say for another day, because I've not been able to get any pricing yet on what it would be to update our code of ordinances. We've got quite a few amendments through the years since the last time it was updated in print, and that's something we can say for another day.
So that's number 4.
Yeah, down at the
We'll
bottom.
Just table it.
I can
Okay.
scratch it. Dylan's not here. He and I had sat down and he had gone through with the talked to the engineers and other staff about public works projects, water and wastewater projects. And we were really just wanted to run through the list with you all and let you kind of see the totality of what's out there, because I feel like you can't start attacking it unless you really know the whole scheme of things. So we can start on the water side, and I can give you an update on the first item there, the upgrades at the water plant.
Yes.
We had a conference call with McGill, the engineers, Mike Dowd and Jay Molesky this morning. And I will make one change where it says 372,000 is the loan. That's actually 342. Not 372.
Is that
And so
in
look at the yellow at the top of your sheet that says water.
our, so we need to change that to what now?
342,000 as the
Okay.
loan amount instead of 372.
Well, that's good.
Which gives you, about 456,000 to play with there. Back in, I guess, 2017, 2018, the town sought funding from the state revolving fund, for monies to not only repair the OMC pump station, but also to upgrades at the water plant. And every time they bid it out, it came in too much. And the part that was really pushing it up and over the edge was an equalization basin up at the water plant. The price on that was way beyond what they had projected or predicted that it would bid for. So if you'll remember back in October, Jay came to our meeting and said, let's split these two projects apart in terms of bidding, so we can get on with the OMC part, because we were having our force main issues, and we increased the loan amount to deal with the force main, and that bid out and actually came in under bid. And so that part of the money is I guess already in the works. This additional money, which is the $342,000 at no interest, which is a loan from SRF. And then there's an additional grant fund of $114,000. And the $342,000 is at no interest on a 20-year term, just like the OMC pump station.
Does this grant any match require?
No, this would be a loan, and then you've already been approved for the money from the state.
Okay.
But the problem was we couldn't get the two projects to bid together, so we split them apart. Now we're to doing something with the water part, and the state is jumping up and down for us to give them a schedule, because it is a state revolving loan, and they would like for us to start paying our money back so that they can revolve.
Did that go into effect when we done the OMC project,
Did what go into effect?
the loan, like the terms of the loan?
No, see, it's, and that's the part I didn't even know at the time, it's two separate
Okay.
funds. So, clean water is different from drinking water, and the two cannot mix in terms of what the state says. Cause we were thinking, well, we've got this money, let's just move this over to the sewer side, and they said, nope, can't do that. You're gonna have to spend this money. Well, as we've gone along with this project since 2017, there's been many scheduling updates. So every so often, the engineers will send a new schedule of when things are gonna get done, and then you sign it, and it goes down to the state, and they approve it. So, on this water money, when we split the two apart, we didn't come up with a new schedule for the water side of it. So now they're saying we need a new schedule, and we sent one down to them, and then I think the engineers from McGill, who've been in contact with them back and forth, they want us to kind of move forward. So that's what this, a little quicker than what we had set on our schedule. So, that's what this meeting was about this morning, to talk about that. And one of the things that I think everybody has agreed and taken a second look at the water side of the project is that the EQ basin was too much money, and we don't really need it. We have a basin up there, it's not been cleaned out, nobody can remember it ever being cleaned out. But they're thinking that our money would be better spent to have somebody take a look at what it would cost to actually pump out the sludge. This is a backwash. After I wish Shandell was here, or Dylan, to explain the whole process, but you have to backwash your water filtration systems and things like that almost on a daily basis at this point, but that water transfers into this other basin. And then we have a permit from the state that allows us to release that water into a tributary, a stream. Because it is basically, at that point, they take the chlorination out of it, and it's just like natural water.
Oh, okay.
So at one point, the thought was to do away with that process and actually put in a sewer pipe and a new tank and discharge that water into our sewer system. But as we know, we don't need more water discharged into our sewer system. We've got enough going into it. So the idea is to scratch that plan, keep our permit, because it was brought to our attention if we did away with that permit, it probably would be difficult to get it back. Keep that permit, clean out the tank that we have, and then continue on with our other work that we want to do up there, which has to do with piping and pumping and a lot of different things that are supposed to make the plant work more efficiently. So that's kind of where we are with that. I think the engineers are gonna come up with sort of, they told us at the state we had to keep it within the same scope of the work we had already submitted to them, and that they'd have to update their engineering report, but they think that it will fly to take that EQ basin out and the sewer piping out and use the money to rehabilitate the tank that we're currently using, and then move on with the other repairs or
Now,
changes.
this tank is in good shape.
Our understanding is, our belief is that it's in good shape. I mean, this is what Dylan tells me, Shane tells me, that it's in good shape. It's just, you have to clean, because there's a lot of sediment, obviously, that comes from raw water. You have to clean that stuff out periodically, and nobody can remember when it was cleaned out. So we don't know. We'll have to get somebody like Mountain Environmental up there to see what it would take to pump it out and clean it. And,
Goodness.
there can be a more I guess, a more accurate evaluation of the shape of the tank, but nobody seems to think there's a problem
Good,
with the
okay.
tank. So that's a quick update on that. The next, the rest of the items are in pink, red, which mean incomplete. So when we had the situation I guess it's been a month back now or more, where we had the pump go down and the motor go down at the raw water intake. One of the things that the engineer who was servicing the pumps talked to Dylan about was the fact that we have a 6-inch line that comes from the raw water intake and goes up the mountain to the water plant. And that the size of that line, based on the amount of water we need per minute, was probably small, that we needed a larger line. And he suggested a 10-inch line, and that would be a significant amount of savings to us on an hourly rate, because we wouldn't have to run our pumps full speed all the time. You know, we haven't had that engineered out, but it is something that, based on what we were told, the amount of savings that could be made, that it certainly was worth looking into. And we think that project will be somewhere between, $500,000 and $1 million to replace that whole line, which that would have to be, trenched out and replace it, because you couldn't take your water line out from your main water source to do the work. So that is there. And Dylan has kind of ranked these in what he thought was order of importance. The next thing was an update of our capital improvement plan and our asset management plan. It's not been updated since 2016, and it's recommended that it's updated every 3 years. And I think we've seen, just from the projects we've had and the things we're discovering, that whatever's on that list ranking what our capital improvement ought to be has kind of switched around a lot. And that's for water and sewer. And I'm going to move this down at the bottom. You'll see it says GIS of system. That's a mapping, a digital mapping of all of our lines. I'm going to move that up with that, because I think it goes in conjunction with it. We're having the stormwater map. We got the grant to do that with Jessica Wilburn through High Country Council of Government. Dylan and I had a meeting with her and Phil True, and they gave us a price to also map, which would start after they do stormwater. They do them one at a time. Also map the water lines and the sewer lines. All that mapping goes into a program that the crew or whoever, the public works director, can pull up on a computer, a smartphone, an iPad, and be able to say, this is where these lines are, this is how old they are, this is where this manhole is, this is what the condition of the whole thing is, which really, I think, is helpful, because you can see, all right, in this area we're having a lot of problems, and know exactly where things are, which we found out that there's a lot of things we haven't known exactly where they are.
Hey, there, I got a question.
Yeah.
Not to back up, but
Yeah.
on priority one, just out of
I'm
curiosity.
You can talk to me any.
Thank you.
I'm trying to turn my phone off. It's about to die.
Are we able to treat more water if we have more water? I mean, aren't we basically treating what we're getting up there right now, and then taking what we're
Yeah,
all 3 shifts to treat what
It
we're getting
is,
right
I
now?
think-
I mean, I understand the savings as far as the power to get it up there,
right.
but I mean, you're putting more volume of water up there. Are we able to treat more?
I do not
I know
think
that's
we're,
probably a
we're not
different
permitted
question,
to treat any more than,
Right.
obviously, I don't think we're at our maximum capacity.
So the major saving
Yeah.
is just not pumping so much.
The major savings, I think, is not pumping so much and the wear and tear on your pumps.
Okay.
And, you know, and there's a lot of this stuff I don't understand. I wish Dylan was here to explain it better than I can explain it. But the pressure to get it up there would be alleviated by a larger pipe, is the way it's been explained to me.
Speaking of pipes, Heather, I mean, when possible, are we trying to change all of our 6-inch to 10-inch?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, I don't think so, no. This is just for this particular line that runs from where we get our water out of Cane River up to the water plant.
So, I mean, so where did I heard that, you know, the 10-inch line is preferable when possible, or no?
I don't know I mean, I don't think that would be everywhere that it would be preferable
Okay.
when possible. I don't think there'd be everywhere that you would need that. I think they just felt like that there would be a real cost savings and an energy savings. I mean, the way Mr. Underwood put it to Dylan was, he calculated out we're spending about $61 an hour in pumping it up there in this 6-inch line, and that figure would go down to around $13 an hour.
That is,
So, you know, and like I said, this is something that really needs to be engineered out. These are rough numbers. We're not giving you anything that an engineer's actually looked at and said. We're just putting the things on there that have been brought to our attention through this whole process of evaluating these things.
Well, it definitely would be a savings. I mean, Niles will tell you, speaking of flow, you know, two 6-inch lines, a 10-inch line will put more up there than two 6-inch lines.
That's what
It
I
don't,
was thinking.
mathematically, it don't make sense, but Niles will probably tell you the physics of
Jump in here,
that.
Niles, and say
More
it,
than I
because I
can,
know
yeah.
a lot about it. I just know, do I have water pressure when I turn on my tap?
I just think you're right, I think it's just gonna be cheaper to pump it.
Well, it seems logical, I mean,
So, and I guess, Russell, if you pump, well, I mean, overall it's probably gonna be the same, but I mean, I think their thought was you wouldn't have to make water as much or as often. You would have more of a volume coming up at one time, at shorter periods of time. And again, that's, you know, I mean, I don't think our ability to make any more, it's not gonna change our capacity.
Right.
But it's gonna make it more efficient, I guess that's the way to put it.
well, that's good.
Sorry to back up. I just-
No,
it kinda hit me after
I
you moved on.
I should have stopped and said, like, do you have a question?
We shouldn't have let you eat.
I
So,
was huffing that hamburger down.
so, you know, I think everybody agrees that's looked at this, that the mapping system, I mean, this program that Jessica has would allow you to, if they worked on a water line, go in to the program and say, on this date, we did such and such, sort of update it in real time, and then I think for some of the towns that she does it for, like North Wilkesboro and some others, maybe West Jefferson or Jefferson, they, you know, quarterly she comes in and does some updating too, to make sure you've always got the most accurate information. And I do think it would be helpful in planning just to kind of know, A, where the problems are, you know, you just keep seeing over and over, and B, what the age of the infrastructure is, so that you can say, okay, in 10 years, we're probably gonna be needing to do something with this, so we need to start saving now, rather than waiting until it collapses.
It's probably really gonna help you on grants too, if you've got something really nice to put in front of them, say,
Yeah.
hey, look, this section's brand new, but it goes into this section that's
Breaking up.
80 years old.
So Heather, when this, mapping is done, I mean, will we then know where our oldest lines are? I mean,
I think it will be able, yeah, I think it will be able to tell us, you know. I mean, like we've said all along, there's a lot of people that have that knowledge walking around with it in their head.
I know, that's the
But
problem.
as they go away,
Yes.
there's new people coming on that just don't know, you know. So that's, I think, really valuable information. Now, we already have the grant for the stormwater, and I'll talk a little bit about, since we've kind of jumped this up, to a grant that, Department of Water Quality has, that will come out in September. It's $150,000 on the water side, and then you have to do a separate application, which is $150,000 on the sewer side. Those have a 15% match. But that's what they're for, to pay for studies, mapping, updating your asset management plans, that sort of thing. Now, I don't know that we've got I'm sure if we had $150,000 that some engineering firm would tell us that was just exactly how much we needed. But, but we wanna look at that some more. She had said she thought that she would be ready to move from the stormwater mapping in the late fall and could jump over into the sewer mapping, which she only quoted us $25,000 for that. It could be something that we said, okay, we're gonna fund the sewer side of it ourselves and then go for the grant, cause there would be a match. Corey says it's 2 separate applications, 2 separate matches. So, but that's something to keep in mind. Of course, we all know about the East and West Main water lines, how old they are. We're thinking about having a birthday party this year with cake and balloons and, just to let everybody know, guess what? These things were horse and buggy days.
They are dinosaurs.
They are, and we have had some conversations. I did a little bit of research and found out, you can pipe burst water lines. But Dylan said that the crew and he are really interested in having more cutoff valves along the line than what they have, so that if you do have a break somewhere, you're not shutting down half a town. So we would have to figure out how all that worked with pipe bursting, and I don't really know how it would work. They said they would do like 500-foot sections at a time, but there again, this $2 million amount was sort of what we had several years ago when they were talking about just replacing one side. It may be that if you were able to pipe burst, you could get, both done for somewhere in that amount. It is much, much cheaper if you can pipe burst and you don't have to trench it out. I couldn't believe how much cheaper it is. But,
What do you mean by that? Do the whole thing, what do you say?
well, what they do is, they go down into an area and then they go through the existing pipe.
Oh,
sort
with
of the new
those.
pipe, and they
Mhm.
bust out the old one and then the new one's there. So they don't have to dig up the road. And I think that's where the cost savings is mainly, not having to do that. So what I'm saying is, what we've seen is that it's about half. So if you said it was $2 million for each side of town, if you were able to pipe burst it, you might could do all of it for half of that. But there again, that's engineers and what they tell us we can and cannot do. Then the pump station at the intake, at the raw water intake, the one that we've had, a complete rehab of that would be about $750,000. Now we have a new motor that we did have to buy to put in, and then a rehabbed motor on the other side. But that would sort of go with, in my mind, replacing this line if we wanted to make that a project, to totally rehab your intake. But when you get to that and talking about what your intake is, our backup intake is the Bolins Creek raw water line, which was also put in 100 years ago.
That is ancient.
I've been told by, and Niles can correct me, I've been told by horse and plow they put it in. And so that is a much longer length of line to get it down to where the raw water intake connects where it is currently now. but we definitely need a secondary source of water. But Dylan had that listed as number 5 on his list.
I wonder if we even have right away on that line.
I'm sure not.
Probably not. It runs through my backyard.
Yeah, it goes right through the house's yard.
Give us a right now.
So do you get free water?
It's raw water.
It's raw water, it's not treated
Oh,
water,
well,
so he
that's-
doesn't want it. But, I don't know, you could, I don't know, sprinkle your garden with it
I
or.
did, digging flooders on the back part of my house.
You found out exactly where it was, didn't
Exactly
you?
where it is.
There wasn't no map, but you found out. The next thing I'll mention is number 8, the Shepherd's Way lift station. That has, I mean, it's old and it's given us some trouble, and apparently it was just designed for that specific, it wasn't like something somebody bought off a shelf, it was designed for that specific project, and it is, difficult to find parts and things like that, but that's something that has given some problems, but they don't think replacing that pump is gonna be, obviously that's like the cheapest thing on the list. And then the last thing I'll mention is this, water line extension to Hickory Springs, which Jamie has updated y'all on frequently, depending on, you know, if the Little Leaf project lands up there or not.
We'll know definitively next week. Their board is supposed to make their final decision. If they exercise that option, then we'll know for sure.
So do we need to be praying?
Yeah, you can. Never hurts.
It won't hurt.
It's always a good thing to do.
Well, I know that you say you feel it's gonna go through, but,
It's going somewhere here.
okay.
I'll just say that. It's most likely that site. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to do, if that's, we'll know next week.
Okay,
And we've had discussions, as Jamie has updated you all, with various vendors about that project, because it is something that's creating jobs. We wish that they would happily throw in a few extra dollars for some of these other things, but it may just be the extension that, that we can hook them for. But in any event, you know, you can see the bottom line there, almost $9 million worth of projects. Leslie came up with those numbers, and like I'm saying, these are just raw figures for discussion, for thought. It's not, nothing has been costed out exactly.
well, it gives you an idea though.
But it gives you an idea of where we are and what our needs are and what could be coming down the pipe at some point, literally, on the water side of things. And we just really wanted to be able to sit down with y'all and just talk specifically about that and answer any, like I said, I wish Dylan was here, but I didn't feel like we should put off getting the information in your hands, and then if you have questions you think of, we can either do this again, or you can send an email, or you can talk to one of us.
Okay,
I had a question. Is the Shepherd's Way lift station, is that something that gets the water on up to all the houses
It does,
up in
yeah.
there? You know, because I never heard of the Shepherd's Way lift station.
Yeah, I've always
But I
been
just-
called pump station, but.
That's what I figured it was. It gets some impetus to the water to get up to
Right.
those
keeps
houses.
it going.
Keeps the water up,
Okay.
get it up the hill there.
Gotcha.
Get it up the hill there. So, if you wanna move on to wastewater,
Yeah,
you can
let's
do
go.
that. So we have one that's green, and we're excited about green, because that means it's done. And that would be our 3 plant out at the treatment center. We also have, one that's in progress, one that we hope will soon be in progress. The OMC pump station, project, as I mentioned earlier, the bid on it did come in over $100,000, less, than what we had anticipated. We reserved those funds, and we have been in discussion with the engineers about creating what they call a splitter box, or some kind of valve system that will allow us to connect to the East Yancey wastewater treatment plant and divert some flow down there. which certainly will take a lot of heat off out here and allow us time to get, you know, some projects done at the Planet Pine Swamp, rehabbing the 5 treatment train and getting some more upgrades out there that need to be done. So, that is scheduled to be done sometime in June. And I think it will correspond nicely with the East Hampton water lines being finished. And we will have to, then if you'll skip down to this legal transfer of the East Yancey Sewer District to the town, the right of ways and the assets and that sort of thing, we'll have to figure out how exactly we're gonna do that and make it all nice and legal.
Right.
I think we will
Yes.
probably, consult with, Billy Clark, who I think, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but he handled most of those right-of-way transfers and any litigations and setting up the sewer district.
He did,
Yeah.
they've got all of the title files on all of the easement acquisitions and the real properties. Some of that's owned in fee simple.
So
And
what's,
then they've done the establishment of the sanitary district, we set it up as well.
so what's kind of timeline on that, Jamie?
Well, be completed in July, the work.
Oh,
That's
okay.
when the schedule is, depending on weather, of course, like the rest of these, but the contract calls for it to be done in July. So it'll be finished around the same time
Who got that?
that your
Yeah.
height pipeline. They're scheduled to start next month.
Good.
And, you know, we're hoping that, like I said, the big thing we're kind of waiting on with the pump stations is just the pumps to get here. We're on a 16-week lag because of COVID. They were ordered first part of January, so I don't think the actual construction work part is gonna take all that much time. It's just getting the equipment here that we need. So we hope those two will kind of match up, and Jamie and I will have some discussions with Mr. Clark about what he thinks the best way to go, what kind of fancy legal documents we need to transfer all of this, finally, after 30 years.
Yeah.
30
Longer
years.
than-
And then our West Main interceptor line to the sewer plant, which is what we currently have a CDBGI grant application in for now. When I talked with Phil True last week, he said, March, we would have, I was hoping it was February, but March we should have a decision. And then hopefully they fund that, and then that project can get underway. I think the first step would be the engineering piece. And then we filled in, I think Dylan put in a similar amount to do the line going down East Main. But I talked with, Shane, and some work has been done, down that way, but I think he feels like, and Dylan feels like, and Matt feels like that we are taking on a lot of water, in that line. It's older and it's pretty much laying in that creek going down
Oh, goodness.
past here, once you get below Ivy Street, all the way down to the pump station. It's not as far a distance as the West Main project, which is gonna go all the way down to Pine Swamp. It would just need to get from there to the force main down at, the pump station. But, the problem you have there is it's in a floodway or a floodplain, and CDBGI won't let you use their funds to replace that unless you're moving it outside of a floodplain or floodway, and there's nowhere to move it that's outside of, everything is floodplain there, there's nowhere to put it. Now, we understand that if we can, again, go back to pipe bursting, if we can pipe burst, we might be able to use their funds. However, if we get $2 million for this project, it's gonna be another 3 years before we can apply for those funds again. So, cause you can only get $2 million, is it 2 million? Is
at a
it
time, yes, it is.
two at a time. So, you know, that is an area where we would like to have some engineering studies done to see what the extent, I mean, if it's manhole rehabilitation, that's a lot cheaper than line replacement. You know, it may be I'm sure it's probably a combination of both, but we'd like to know exactly what we're dealing with. So, that's an area of keen interest to everybody because I think they feel like a lot of the water we take on is probably coming from there. And then again, we have update the CIP and the asset management plan, which both the water and sewer would be combined into one document. So the 0.5 treatment train rehab. This is to do something similar to that we did with the 3 plant. You know, the tank itself, the outer area of it is concrete, so we wouldn't expect as much patching and that sort of things, but the insides probably, you can imagine, are probably close to being the same. They might not be as bad, they're not as old, but I wouldn't imagine those chambers would be in much better shape than what we found. And then also replacing the mechanicals. And currently, right now, Chad Prius and Dylan are building some diffuser units, just that you can drop in and add a little bit more airflow. But obviously those need to be replaced because they're about kaput. And we certainly don't want to see what happened, you know, a shutdown. That would be catastrophic. So this was part of the amount that we submitted to Golden Leaf, and we're not successful to get that treatment train rehabbed. That's something that I know the state is gonna want to see in our agreement with them. So we're gonna have to figure out, you can put a little check mark by that, we're gonna have to figure out some way to pay for that. And then additional upgrades out to the sewer plant for the headworks, for a new laboratory building, which the one we have is kind of crumbling, it's got cracks in it, it's shifting a little bit. We had talked about, you know, doing some type of a modular unit or a mobile unit or something like you have at construction sites. They don't need anything fancy, but that's definitely part of this $680,000. I think, you know, again, we got some real raw numbers and they were very conservative. For instance, the estimate for the headworks was to be expanded and repaired was like $75,000. I think an actual quote came in for $35,000. So these numbers may be on the high side, but we just, you know, plugged in kind of what we had, being very conservative. But that's definitely a project that we're gonna have to move on. The Bakers Creek pump station, much like the OMC pump station, gives a lot of trouble. And it's, as Shane said this morning when he and I talked, it's just shot. We had a situation, a failure out there, but it didn't result in a spill, luckily. So the state didn't have to be involved, but they were looking for a part, an elbow that needed to go in it, and we're having trouble finding it because it's older than the OMC station.
Parts
So
don't exist anymore.
they don't, but that's definitely something that is kind of a failure just waiting to happen. It needs to be on our radar. Again, mapping of the entire sewage system, collection system, they quoted us a price of $25,000 from High Country. And then, I don't know a lot about, I know we just did work up on Meadow Road, but there's an area of that line that's in a creek area that, again, I don't think you could use the CDBGI money to replace it, but that probably needs, it does need attention. It So on the sewer side, you can see we're about 4.6, 4.7 million, in funds needed, and I don't know that he's added all, I don't think he's not added that right. But, cause he added in the things we've already done, but, so you can take a couple of $1 million off that, particularly if we get
That's
this,
good.
this sewer, interceptor line money in. But, so there's kind of where we're at.
That's still over $10 million.
Yeah, it is. And so then you come down to what's your best financing options. You know, state revolving loan is nice if you've got a project. But it's a 20-year term. There hasn't been any interest, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
But,
just with all the money that we've got here, I just don't know if we can.
oh,
Give it in
I
20
know.
years.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we have to pick where our most critical needs are and where we can get the best financing. USDA stretches that 20 years out to 40 years. There's a little bit of interest there. Some of it, if your income levels are right and if your rates are right, some of it can be given in a grant.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're putting stuff in the ground that's probably gonna last 30 or 40 years, so it might make more sense to spread your term out longer for that. In any event, there, you know, whichever way we go, we need a rate study done to see how much we borrow and how much it's gonna cost and how much it's gonna cost everybody to.
Well,
To
you
pay
know,
for it.
I think the thing, Jamie can discuss this better than I, but, you know, we were turned down by Golden Leaf because, as they said, we do not fund your regular ongoing maintenance. That's something we have to show that we're doing, and what we submitted was, they felt was in that category, did they not, Jamie? So it behooves us to stay focused on those which we know there are limited funding sources for.
And I mean, the CDBGI money is really nice, I've said this before, but it feels like we're looking for a project to fit the grant more than we're looking for
Money to do
what
the
we really need to fix. And it's not to say the projects that haven't been done they did. I mean, they were part of, you know, studies done 20 years ago. They did need to get fixed, but, and it's always great when you can get free money from anybody. But, you know, the trade-off on that is you don't really get to pick and choose what gets done, and is that helping you to get to your ultimate goal of not having to expand your plant? Because we know from the recent study that McGill did on the plant that the real issue is the INI, and that about 64% of what we treat out there is just extraneous water. It's not sewage. If we were just treating sewage, we could add another 3,000 two-bedroom homes onto it. You know? So, I just really felt like y'all needed to kind of be updated and see some numbers, because sometimes when we have a discussion about this project or a discussion about that project, but it's just not sort of laid out where you can see where everything is. And I'm sure these will have to be cut up into projects. It's just, do we go really big and say, okay, we're gonna fix all this stuff and we're gonna borrow a whole bunch of money from USDA, which I believe, Jamie, you correct me if I'm wrong, then that gets sold into a bond market and it becomes like a revenue bond, and you will be required to raise rates to whatever they have to be to meet that. And technically you should be anyway, because these are enterprise expenditures. It's supposed to run like a business. It's supposed to fund itself. But, that would definitely be a requirement. And I think if we're going to get big on addressing some of these things, I mean, some of the things what I'm hearing from the state on the SOC is, you know, they're very interested in the OMC pump station getting finished and hooking up the valve into the splitter box so we can send some flow down to that plant, cause it needs flow. And this one needs less. They're also real interested in the West Main Interceptor, because that's a big project. But if we don't get the funding for it, I don't know where that's gonna leave us with them. And they have said, well, we just amend their agreement, and we understand there's times when that doesn't happen, but y'all gotta be thinking about where you're gonna come up with this money from. And then the upgrades and the rehab of the 5 plant, they're gonna want that in there as a project. We also said, you know, we had some kind of stuff that was already in the mix with the mapping of the GIS system, but any of that kind of stuff, they like to see. But those are the things that are really on their radar right now.
Well, and rightfully so. I mean,
Well, and what they've told me is, you know, because I'm not believing anything till I see the ink that's been dried, but they're telling me, once we enter into the agreement with them, they will lift the TAP moratorium. They won't lift the extension moratorium, but they will allow us to build into the agreement allocations, extra allocations for any extensions. So we've all kind of been feverishly trying to come up with what might happen in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, you know, that we could add in there. But again, they've said, look, we can, if we feel like you guys are on the right path and you're being diligent, and you're being honest with us, and you're working on all this stuff, then we're gonna try to help you any way we can, and we can always amend things. So,
You know, Heather, one thing that you might consider, and we maybe briefly talked about this, if you are thinking about a new project, and if you would be thinking about USDA to finance it, USDA does offer technical assistance grant for communities who are trying to put a plan, a scope of work together to go and then borrow that revenue bond from USDA. You don't have to. If you qualify for the grant, even if you don't do the loan with USDA, that's fine. But I know that there's a process for that probably can actually go forward. Now, when we talked about that, the
We
state of
did.
the federal budget was in flux, but I think since they've adopted a resolution to move forward, a continuing resolution on the federal budget, there's probably funds there that would be available. If you actually wanted to say, you know, get some money to put into evaluating. Rest of, I guess some of this stuff, you know, you're gonna have to do, right?
well, some of it we know we're gonna have to do. I mean, I think, you know, the state is gonna wanna see, at least the plant and the treatment train rehab. And then, you know, we were gonna put into the agreement the West Main Interceptor line down to the sewer plant in the hopes that we get this $2 million grant. But, you know, if we don't get that, I don't know if they're gonna say, well, we still need you to figure out a way to get that done. Or if they're gonna say, well, you could pick some of these other things that are gonna help, you know. That's what they're interested in. Where are you gonna get your bang for your buck? Which kind of brings me to, we're sitting around here, I'm sitting here talking about this, and really whose opinion counts in all of this is what an engineer has to say about how much something's gonna cost.
So is that what we need to do to get some more, some true
Hard
figures on the
fact,
cost of these?
Yes, it is.
Isn't that what we need to do? Because we've been saying, well, a few years ago, it was like $2 million, but if we did this other, technique, it could be half of that, and so isn't that what we need to do, get,
Well, I think we need, yeah, I do.
and do we need to pick out certain, do we need these engineers to take all these and work on those figures, or are we supposed to pick out certain projects we think are more pressing?
Well,
Or,
I think we say, here's what we've come up with, help us develop projects, prioritize out of this, you know, based on basically what our staff is seeing and telling us. I mean, they're out there, they know
Yeah.
where the problems are, they know what they're getting called out in the middle of the night and on Sundays and everything else to fix.
what has to be,
You know,
well, we know the sewer, we
right.
just talked about some of these things.
Right. And which kind of gets me down to number two. Had talked with one of the engineering firms that we have dealt with, and so as we've talked about before, there's a law in North Carolina, anytime you engage engineering services, architectural services, those type of services, you're supposed to put out what's called an RFQ, or a qualifications statement, asking for firms to send you their qualifications. Now, this is not a situation where it's giving you a price for a certain, in fact, they're not supposed to give you anything about their fee in this, for a certain scope of work. But you list, here's the scope of work, these are the things that we're gonna be needing help with. And is your firm qualified to do that? And then they send you their qualifications. You're supposed to do that whether you're spending 50 cents or $50 million. Up to $50,000, you can do what we have done in the past, which is sign basically a certification that it's below that amount, and you sort of pick and choose who you want.
Not the project is below that amount,
Their fee.
Their fee.
Yes, their fee. Need to clarify that. The problem is, you know, we're calling these people, you know, on a weekly basis saying, hey, what would this be, what would that? And I think there is some feeling that it would be helpful if they were on call, because they certainly know what their fee, how far it can go before it's in violation of the law to do it without an RFQ. And I think that there's also an idea that, okay, I'm spending a ton of time and effort and energy kind of generating proposals that may not get chosen, I guess, is kind of how it was put to me. And so the idea that was proposed to me, which I had looked at this before and had not looked deeply into it and didn't necessarily think it was a good idea, because I think competition's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to just say, well, we'll put all our eggs in this basket and then they can just charge you whatever they want. But the idea behind an on-call engineering firm is that you put out an RFQ for sort of a general, you know, we've got all these things in water and sewer, or it could be roads or anything else that need to be addressed. And then they send you their qualifications, and then my understanding, after talking to some other communities that have done this, and also the school government, that you can choose as many as you want. You could have 10 firms that are on call. And then when you have a project that you've identified, you call one, or I would assume you could call both and say, then submit me a proposal, you know.
Seems reasonable.
But once you've done that, it gets you around that Minnie Brooks threshold of having to worry about, is this more than $50,000 or not?
You're covered.
You're covered, and they're covered, because it's all kind of out there, I guess, in the open too. You know, we're all on call here, and they don't feel like they're stepping on a competitor's toes or whatever. So we have, I guess, toyed with the idea of putting together an RFQ and sending it out to various, because you have to publish it, but we can, on our website, but we can also send it individually to different firms that we're familiar with. you know, the statute doesn't have any language about really how you get the information out there, you just have to. So that's something, in light of the scope of everything we have going on and how much engineering we're probably gonna need in the end.
How many RFQs you're gonna turn around?
How many RFQs we probably have to write over and over for each, and it may be something that would
It's gonna
be,
a lot of engineers.
that would be easier to say, do it this way on the front end, and then, you know, I don't know.
Is that something you have to do yearly, or is that?
You can have a contract for, most of them are somewhere between 2 and 3 years. Now, I talked with them up in Boone, and they sent me, and what they had was their RFQ, and then they have sort of like task orders that they send out to different engineering firms. The only thing that I'm not yet 100% sure on is if you have a grant that is federally funded, you're going to have to send out one anyway. They're going to require you to. And then it is my understanding that the engineering firm that actually provides your preliminary engineering report is not allowed to bid on the work to do the actual engineering for the project.
Really?
That's correct.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, they know it better than anybody.
That would be my counter argument, but I don't think anybody on the federal level is listening to that.
So, I mean, that applies if you got USDA money to do some of these.
Yeah.
USDA,
USDA, CDBGI, ARC, yeah, it does.
Hmm. Well,
It
that's
does.
interesting.
So,
Like,
I guess that's why
It kind of puts all your eggs in one basket again.
well,
Yeah.
it kind of does, but I mean, you've got two, if you've got,
Cause off the top of my head, I was thinking about 2.
yeah, I know.
The 2 that you would probably
But
think
you
about.
need one to do the other and one to do the other.
Right.
And so I
So
guess.
you might be better off to try to find a third
Well, yeah.
that you send the RFQ to.
You definitely would, well, you definitely are gonna send it to more than just the 2, but you could pick 3 or 4. If you've got that much interest, I don't know that you would, but, you know, and that's the other thing, it's who responds to them. I mean, I had to send out one on the fire department and had one response. You know, so, it's, but I guess it's just one more step that's kind of out of the way. If you did it, you don't have to wait to get your RFQ out before you can start really, like you said, kind of getting some hard and fast figures and numbers on things. And get your projects developed. If you had somebody that was on call.
Well, I don't see anything on here, it's gonna be less than $50,000.
Well, that's the project. You don't know that, but I can assure you the engineering
Oh,
on,
here's something for 10,000.
well,
I was gonna say, did you not see that?
15
Yeah.
for doing the contract at the end.
yeah.
I don't think
mean,
that's an engineering
But
thing.
I mean, we've had, Leslie can attest, we spend a lot of money.
Oh, gosh. Russ is like, we have this money, and I said, well, would you win the lottery? So what is
Yeah,
it?
that's really what we need.
You know, one kind of, Heather mentioned it, thing it might be handy about having more than one firm on call is that a lot of times, if you put an RFQ out for a PER, and those companies know that the bigger project's coming down the line, they ain't gonna bid on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna say, I have no interest in doing your PER, because that means I'm disqualified from
Yeah,
bidding
I
on your
mean-
project. Whereas, you know, like she said, if you had multiple firms and you could just pick and choose.
Call up A and say, hey, we need you to do the PER on this. Sorry. Sorry.
Next time.
Next time.
Well, when you
know.
say discuss on-call engineering, blah, 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 do you just want us to tell you, go ahead and do it? What do you want
Yeah,
us
I
to
mean,
say?
I just wanna have a discussion. I just wanna,
Oh.
I just wanna know
Well, I don't
what
guess
y'all's
it-
opinion is on something like that.
Well, we don't have much choice, do we?
Well, yeah, we can keep on doing it like we've been doing
Oh.
it. It's just,
Well, this is the right way.
Does it make
this
it,
is the right way, and
wouldn't
it's
it make it easier for
frustrating.
you?
Well, I think it'd make it easier for me, for
Administratively
Dylan.
simpler, or,
I think it would be to
well,
just
then I think we
say,
should do it that way.
we've got these 2 firms or these 3 firms, and Dylan, you decide who you wanna work with.
And they
on
get
this
to know
deal.
us, and we get to know them, or he would, I don't, you know.
What it boils down to, Bunny, is there's not been a whole lot of competition here in a long
It's
time,
not.
and there's starting to be a little bit of competition, so this is the legal way to do it.
Well, that's what we
Am I
should
right
do.
or wrong, Heather?
I mean, yeah, in a sense,
You
you're
are.
right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we should do then,
Do we
in my
need-
opinion, that's my 2 cents.
Well, I agree with you, Benny. I think we
Oh, I
do.
do too.
Well, and where we would, I mean, I guess that I would like your blessing to just put together an RFQ and send it out. And then where the rubber would hit the road, nobody pays a fee for these annual contracts or multi-year contracts. It's, the fee comes when you actually engage them in the
To do a
work.
job.
But you would have to approve the final contract with whichever firms we agree to. So,
Well, do we need to take action on this for you now or later?
I mean, I think you can just tell me, yeah, that you're in agreement for me and
Just
Dylan
do
to
it.
work on putting an RFQ together to send out.
Yeah.
We don't need to do a motion, do we, or do we?
I think you can just get by with,
So why don't you
we're
just do it?
directing staff.
With a nod.
We're directing.
I think we all nodded yes.
But if you have 4 submit to you, that doesn't mean that you have to get proposals from all 4 of those on a particular project.
No,
You can say.
you just
okay.
pick. You just say, you know.
If you don't like their fee, you whatever.
Yeah, and they send you a proposal with a fee, and if you don't like their fee, you know, then you say, I think that's too much, then you go back
Gotcha.
down to the
Yep.
list and say, let's look at, and I mean, it probably keeps them a little more honest and, yeah.
I mean, when you seriously think about that, we've paid almost as much in engineering as it actually is costing to replace the pump at the pump station for MC.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It's a
It's
lot.
a lot of money. So I've already talked to you about the SOC agreement. It's in progress. I got a little frustrated with them because, you know, Tim sort of made it out to be, all right, here, you know, we'll come up with this agreement and we'll all agree on it. And so he and I were back and forth and with the agreement, and then all of a sudden he said, oh, well, actually, before we agree on the agreement, you've got to submit an application. And the application is not lengthy, but it does require a independent certification from an independent expert that without these steps, our sewer system would not work as it's supposed to work.
Good Lord.
Which seems a little bit, since they've been sending us violations for quite a while, that, you know, guess what? It's not working the way it's supposed to work, but,
What else is new?
that basically these things need to be done so that it can come into compliance. So we have reached out to an engineer to give us said opinion so that it can be attached to our application. And, we'll send the application in with a draft of the agreement, and then the state has to say, by state, I mean Raleigh has to say, oh, this looks good. One thing that was interesting was the director of their division, I guess, has he been confirmed yet? Have we been too busy
Not
impeaching
yet.
people?
We've been
But-
too busy impeaching people.
Been too busy impeaching people, but
He had a confirmation here in the committee, but I don't think he's had a floor vote yet.
he is going to be confirmed as the next head of the EPA nationally. So they're gonna get
That's right.
somebody else in, so they're kinda wanting to get these things in the works. They said they were gonna make calls and
So
make
that's
sure
our man
that-
from North Carolina that has been, who's going to work as the head of the, our
EPA,
EPA,
yeah.
and, oh, good, I hope he's
Nationally.
been confirmed by now.
He should be.
So, I don't think he's been, like Jamie said, officially confirmed, but I don't think there'll be any issues with confirming him, so. They're getting a new director, so they're kinda up in the air about things. But we're working on that. I'm pushing, cause I want the tax moratorium lifted, cause we're getting calls all the time from people saying,
Yeah.
what can I do, what can I not do, when can I do it? So, there is that. That's really on the whole water and sewer thing, what we've got.
Well,
You guys have any other,
I like your
Ways
charts,
to-
I mean, that's,
Dylan did those and I think they were good, but I think he did give you a total,
It didn't work
no,
out.
total of all incomplete, but I don't think, I guess he would add this West Main interceptor in because it hasn't been completed yet or started yet, but I guess that got added in there.
Now, I've got a question.
Okay.
Engineering. Remind me exactly, what is it McGill does for us that we retain for engineering? Now, what is it they do?
They're engineers.
I know
So
that.
So,
So when we need them, what do they do?
well, they come out and they assess your project, and then sometimes they go back and they have to design, the actual project, part of it.
Something we're already into. But they're not gonna do, would they be in this list of people that might,
Probably,
okay.
I would think,
Okay. But they
they'd be
would,
interested.
but they're not, I mean, they're not somebody that just automatically does this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, they have different departments, but they definitely have people on staff that just do this stuff. That just do utilities work.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm sure they have people that do, you know, structural, I was looking for the word, I was gonna say buildings and,
But what I was saying was, we just wouldn't automatically send this to them and say, how much do you
No.
think this is going to?
no.
Okay, so that was my
We would
question.
do an RFQ, and then, so what we're saying is, instead of doing it and just putting it out there for everybody, what we would like to do, since we have so many projects, is do an RFQ for engineering services, and then have people respond to that,
Mhm,
and it would be for water and sewer projects.
mhm.
Have people, firms respond to that, and then we could pick any number of firms that we wanted. And there would be a scoring process.
Mhm.
And we would have a committee that would do the scoring. And it would probably be, you know, Dylan, certainly,
Mhm.
Shane, Matt, maybe Leslie. Looking at
That's
this.
a cost.
Yeah, but she's got a feeling for numbers. But, you know, there's a way, you get so many points.
Yeah,
like in a
I get
ranking
that, I
process.
understand all that, but when we, they're on, but we do keep McGill on a retainer, is that right?
No.
We
don't
do
have
not.
any one.
Somehow I had the idea, okay, I was thinking that, so,
Well, I guess
okay.
you just not have to RFQ any projects because you've been fortunate.
Okay,
Fees
that,
were
that,
less
that's
than
it, that's,
$50,000.
I was thinking if we did, why did we, but we don't, all
No,
right, gotcha.
We don't have them.
No.
on retainer.
I was for some reason
I wasn't
thinking we
understanding
did.
what you were asking me, but no, we don't have them on
We do
retainer.
not have an engineering
on a small
firm, a
retainer.
professional engineering firm that is on a retainer of any
No.
kind. Okay,
And
that
if we
answers my-
had an on-call agreement, we wouldn't pay them a retainer to be our
Okay,
engineer.
all right,
We would
for some
just-
reason I was thinking we did. Thank
Not
you.
that I'm aware of, is there, am I?
That's because
No,
you've
I know.
seen,
It's just per project pretty much, you know, that's all.
It's
we
just
pay
we
per
have lots of
project.
projects and
Yeah.
they're always, they've
Okay.
always been the.
We
That
have-
was my
we've
question.
seen McGill a lot at our meetings.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
But they're not retained.
but it's not on a retainer.
No.
Thank you.
No. If y'all wanna just jump right into the next part, talking about some building maintenance and repair stuff that we
Yeah.
have.
Got some stuff here for us to look at.
Again, you know, I'm gonna stress, I think it's good to have assessments, audits, have a capital plan, just like we did for water and sewer for our buildings. You know, we've got some maintenance issues. One of the things that I've had done, and I'll shift from, section 2, is we did get, energy audits done on both the sewer plant and the treatment, or water treatment plant, and I will be sending those, I think we got the reports last week, or maybe the week before. I will be sending those out to you guys to look at. Some of the, rural water did that for us, and it was no charge, so that's nice. Along those lines, I've also talked with a man by the name of Reed Conway with DEQ, who is, I had a meeting with him last week, who, he does, energy audits and assessments for, everything. And so he and I, we got out our bills. Leslie had given me a printout earlier on about how much we're spending annually in energy, and it's about $238,000 a year. And he sort of broke down that information. Then we had a year's worth of bills put together, and he kind of broke down that, we sent it to him, he broke down that information and basically, you know, determined about $190,000 of that we're spending on the water and sewer side. Another $25,000 we're spending on streetlights, which is like a rental program we have. We're still trying, we've been back and forth this week with French Broad, and they don't have a list that they can give us of what we're paying for. We just get a bill every month for 181 streetlights, but they don't have a map or a list. So Brian, with the help of Chad, has been out
Counting.
counting, and I think Randall did some counting one day, since he was kind of quarantined. He was looking for something to do. And we're not too far off, if we're correct. We still would like to see what they have to kind of match up, if they can find anything they have. But it's also, we wanted to see not only how many we had, but which ones were actually working.
That's the thing.
We know the one that is working, that's for sure, but we're not sure about all the rest of them. So anyway, we've been kind of just gathering data, gathering information, and then there is another group that Mr. Conway works with, and they're called the Waste Reduction Partners. They are a group of retired engineers, and they have grant money to allow them to come in and at no charge do energy audits, help with policies, help with sort of strategic plans going forward on how you can run more efficiently, reduce your energy costs, that sort of thing. So we have gotten that process started. They sent us a initial survey that we were gonna fill out this week, but Dylan's gone, so it might be next week, because there's some things. They're gonna do an audit of town hall, and when they're done with that, they'll do one probably here at the town center. And I don't know, I know, Niles, I think, no, that's a safety audit you can get done with the league on the fire department, once it's built, but I'm sure everything there is gonna be real energy efficient anyway. Alright.
We hope so.
We hope so. Just having it new will be energy efficient. But he brought up a lot of good points. They'll make a lot of recommendations, things that we can look at, things that'll be easy to put into a kind of a plan as we go along. But I think it's definitely something we need to look at, because even though we're not spending that much in energy costs every year just on these facilities, you know, as we make upgrades to the water and sewer plant, which was one thing he brought, we rarely have our engineers do a life cycle cost analysis, which is to say, all right, if you buy this pump, it might cost you X dollars more than that pump, but over the life of the pump, how much are you gonna save in energy? And so they do, Natalie had done with rural water some assessment of that sort of thing, and she has, I think she said putting VFDs on those water intake pumps. It would pay for itself in like 1.8 years, the initial cost.
Yeah.
And she had a few other things on the water side. I've gone through that report. It was a cost of less than $45,000, but over a 10-year period would save us $213,000 in energy cost. Of course, Dylan and I talked about it, and he said, well, yeah, but those pumps run like they do because we've got this little pipe, and we can't back them off, which is what these VFD devices do, as Shane taught me about today. They take your power level down and then up when you need it more, that sort of thing. So, it's all just a big circle. But I think it's a way we could really talk about, making some head roads into some costs and expenses that we just really haven't looked at. And find some savings every little bit can help. Even $25,000 a year is helpful.
That's
I
very
think
helpful
so.
for our
That's what we did.
So, yeah, it's helpful. Well, not on any of this, buddy, but it's helpful on something. And then Chad has been looking in, and I'm gonna let him speak about the town center roof repair.
Yeah,
And
tell
sort
us
of what's
about
been
it.
going on.
Yeah, the last few years, we've been having some issues, and it's kind of escalating, so the last couple of weeks, we rounded up a couple estimates to get the primary section of the flat roof repaired along with the strip that goes down the sidewalk, so there's kind of two parts to it. But we reached out to a couple of companies that do commercial type roofs like this with the membranes like what we have that this part of the building comes with. And they're similar in price. The one difference that I would point out is that Eagle installation is using a PVC membrane, which is thought to be a higher quality, longer lasting material. And the roughly the difference in that and the TPO, which is what's on there now, and what Johnson will be using is roughly a $3,000 difference in price. So their estimate takes the higher quality material into consideration using that, where the Johnson does not. They're using the what seems to be considered a lower quality TPO material there. It's a different type of plastic.
So we get better wear out of Eagles.
That's my understanding, and with a little bit of research I did looking into the two types of materials, that seems to be accurate. The PVC is better quality, longer lasting, and is typically used in large facilities where maintenance is more difficult if there is problems, like
Yeah.
say prisons or schools or something like that. And one note on just me personally dealing with them, the Eagle company was very responsive and very informative on just upkeep and some things to be thinking about for us. So that gives you some information on this particular project. It's coming. It's definitely going to need to be addressed soon. We've kind of limped it along, I think, as far as we can, doing our little fixes to it. One thing that Wayne from the Eagle Company mentioned is that the particular material that was here, he thinks was kind of some faulty material that was used a lot around that time, and could explain why it's not lasted any longer than it has.
That's what I was whispering to Leslie about, is how long it's been leaking, because the building's not that old.
Right, and they think it was a type of material that was very affordable at the time. It was used a lot. The company that makes it since gone out of business, and I think we're caught up in that a little bit. It's causing us ours is expiring quicker than it should be.
So Chad, how old is the roof?
This would put it, what, about 05, so.
Can't remember.
so, yeah, around
16.
16 almost.
16 years.
So what is the actual difference?
$800,
Yeah,
but,
Yeah.
but
Bigger product.
it's a
And
lot better product.
And the other thing with the warranty is the warranty is more particular with the TPO material, the cheaper material. They can there's certain things that have to be adhered to, or they could get out of that, where the PVC is more just a broad warranty, it's less particular.
Are they both 20 years?
He said the PVC, depending on the type, could be either 15 or 20.
Who is he? Is he the one with the
The
Eagle?
one with the Eagle is explaining
But he doesn't put down here any, I don't know, like a 20-year manufacturing warranty, does he?
it's not on here,
No.
but I asked him just to make sure in case he wanted to be able to get that information to you. And there would be a 15 to 20-year manufacturer warranty on that, depending on which way we went with materials. There's some variation there, but
Did he say what kind of maintenance we'd have to do to go by the warranty?
if installation is done properly, there would be.
It's on them, not on us, to like do maintenance to
Right.
keep up the warranty.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so it seems like we would be better to go with Eagle. Is that your assessment, Chad?
Seems to be, I mean, it's close, but it definitely seems like the cost for the better quality material is worth it. The difference is not that big.
Right.
And we're not asking for a decision tonight on that. That would just be something at budget time we'll talk about. And some of the savings that we've had, some of our COVID money, what we'll
You might
do with that.
Fire station, too.
What?
The old, big bay in the fire station has a leak in that member, and there's the stripping right down on the electrical box.
Good
It's
Lord.
been 2 years now, it's going down that back wall, that's the reason all that paint's going off the back of the building.
Yep.
So Heather,
Put
what
a
are
roof
you,
on the old part, but the main big bay, that your part of the building.
Yeah.
didn't have that.
Didn't have that.
so when are you thinking that we should make a decision on this? I mean, how is the roof? Is it-
Well, I mean, obviously they've got ongoing leaks
Yeah,
that they've been dealing with, but you're thinking like budget time, thinking about
that's when we'll put it into the
put it
budget.
into next year's
Okay.
budget to.
I had a question. What about those antennas that are on the roof? Didn't we
No,
lease?
the Verizon, there was a number of projects that Verizon put on hold, and we were one of them.
Oh, so they never did that. So I was gonna ask, could they still be, would we need to have those removed or anything? Would that be would that be a,
If we were to get back involved with them, that's something we'd have to make sure was.
that
okay.
would be okay with the roofers?
Right, yeah, that would be something, probably a deciding factor, if that caused our warranty to void.
Yeah,
then
with the-
probably
yeah.
wouldn't do that.
Because I know, at Burnsville Furniture and Hardware, we had one of these types of roofs put on, and it has lasted wonderfully well for years. But you had to be very careful about walking on the roof. They did not want you, up there walking around and whatnot. So we had to be careful, but it's done beautifully. So, I mean, I don't know what type it was, and it's been on there many years now. I don't think, we never had any trouble with it, and I don't think that Dennis has had trouble with it.
Yeah, you think
But
like
there
that,
were, just they didn't want you
check.
walking up there to, being careful about having to be on the roof.
Right,
So
Well,
I just,
Chad, thank you for getting these for us.
sure.
Okay, the next thing is talking about our ADA issues at Town Hall. We had looked at the elevator, and had set money aside for that. We met, Dylan and I met again with Randy Banks from Crowder Banks, who was the only person that had submitted any kind of an estimate to do the construction part of it, but, he said, well, you'll need an engineer and an architect.
Here we go.
And to get them to, come up with a design and how we're gonna do it on this historic building and that sort of thing. Which I'm sure would somehow magically take all the money that we've set aside to get that done.
Well, now, did we set aside any money previously for the elevator?
We did.
That 100,000 we got from our
106.
public, yeah.
Yeah, so is that still set
We
aside?
carried it
it
over,
over.
yeah, to this year, it's there.
So we would have that to build on.
And we just need, you know, like I said, direction on, I mean, there are other things, you know, that need to be done to that building too. I mean, the one entrance downstairs that would be amenable to handicap entrances, you know, it doesn't have the automatic doors like we have out here, things like that. I mean, you know, coming up with kind of an ADA plan for that building, whether that's gonna, I mean, but as you know, cause it's historic, we don't have to put an elevator in it, but is that where our money is best spent and what ultimately is that gonna be? But since the project had kinda, the last thing we really had hard figures on was 2017, I felt like we ought to bring it back up and discuss, do we wanna talk to an engineer and an architect about what they would charge to come up with a plan and a design, and then see how much money we're gonna have to need.
Now, back me up just for a minute, I'm a little confused. You said because it is, on the National Register, we don't have to do an elevator?
Don't have to have an elevator in a
Well-
historic building. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it is but on the flip side of that, to have meetings in it that are compliant with open meetings law and the ADA, because this is a public board, there needs to be a way legally for people, you know, legally that we should have a way for people to get to the meeting from the lower level.
Well, I know that, you know, with the Burnsville School, which is on the National Register, there was not a problem with us doing the elevator. I mean, and we said we have to have one,
Yeah, because it's a public facility and you
Like-
don't, but you,
like that one.
right, but I don't think, the fact that it's a public facility and if you were gonna be having meetings up there, then I do think there has to be a way to get people
Mhm.
up there to comply with the ADA, yes.
Well, I just know that I really like meeting in the old room upstairs. Don't you, Russell?
I do.
I mean, I think it's, that nice meeting room is something that could be used. I mean, we don't want it overly used, but should be available. And the elevator is the means to the end.
But are you saying that it was no problem architecturally, you just put it in there, they didn't have any special requirements because it was an historic building?
Well, in my dealings, and I dealt even with the National Office on Historic Preservation, you know, there was no concern on their part if we put in an elevator, as long as we retained the integrity of the building. I mean, they were all for it.
Yeah.
And I think that was Randy's point, that's why we would need an engineer and an architect.
Put in one of them where you manually close it and crank it.
Like a dumbwaiter.
Now, stay focused here,
And
Russ.
have somebody
I'll
down
use
the
the
road.
stairs, thank you.
I would like to see it become, you know, ADA compliant. I mean, if at all possible. I mean, it would make certainly the building more accessible even for staff or anybody that's going from downstairs to upstairs. I don't know, I don't know much about stairs and how they're built, but those are a rough set of stairs, as far as I'm concerned, to get up. Going
Well,
down.
and that's just what we wanted in thinking of upcoming budget, you know. We've got this money that we've carried over and set it aside, and that certainly can go again. But we're gonna need to get, as Randy said, we're gonna need to get, I guess, an engineer and an architect to.
To meet ADA requirements, does all three entrances have to be? as long as you have
Maybe we
one.
just need an
No.
engineer,
As
but
long
not
as
an
you have
architect.
one that is
Or maybe an
ADA.
architect and not an
So the one off Main Street is ADA compliant, correct?
I don't know.
You'll have to.
I think you'll have to have both. That's what Randy said, I'd have to have both.
Oh, just the doors.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it's a project that we want to keep moving forward with before we
My poor knees.
put a lot of effort into figuring out architects and engineers and.
Is this one more of a priority than maybe another project like the old fire station and trying to?
Well, and I was gonna come to that at this, as the next issue, so we can kinda talk about them all together. I have had a discussion with, I mean, I wouldn't say one was I mean, you know, obviously, the elevator project's been on the list longer than the fire department project, in terms of that being a priority. But I was gonna say on the design and remodel of the fire department building, that I've had discussions with, Jason Miller up at, Appalachian State. Jamie's great find. He's not gonna solve all our problems. I wish he was an engineer. That's the only thing that's wrong with him, is he's not an engineer.
Well, they have, well, we'll talk about that later. There's one teaching, there's an engineer on the faculty.
Oh, well, then we need his name too.
Construction
Does his
department.
name, is his name Jamie or Jason? Cause they're all starting with
Russell,
J.
yeah, Jamie Russell. He's an engineer.
Well, there you go.
You talked to him on
I've
the-
talked to him too. So, anyway, I pitched to them, you know, they did the design for the farmer's market, the building, and then the market structure behind it. And so I talked to him about, would his group be interested in a design remodel for that building? Because, as Jamie points out, they have engineers and architects and interior designers and everything else on their faculty, and then they're training people to do that, who do all that work for basically free. I think the fee is $5,000 for a semester of work, which is certainly a lot less than what we would get if we put it out on the regular open market. And they do a good job. I've been extremely impressed with the presentations that I've seen and the work they've done on the farmer's market. And then they have a construction wing within that whole department where they actually come and do the work. You buy the materials, and I'm sure there's trades that have to be like electrical and plumbing and that sort of thing. But that would be a great cost savings there, so it wouldn't really have to compete with the elevator project, is what I'm trying to get around to.
Good.
It wouldn't have to compete with the elevator project, if they are agreeable, and they meet on the 19th of this month to go over the proposal with their staff to come back and say to us whether they think it's a good idea. But he felt like that it incorporated several different units within their department, their overall department, that get the interior design and of course get the design group that Jamie has worked with on the farmer's market, and get the construction involved, and so that would be a project that they would undertake probably in the spring semester, because they said they'd have more students. So it'd be spring of next year, since they're working on the farmer's market through the summer and fall of this year. But they felt like that they could get, you know, some designs and some renderings for us, and he felt like the staff would be agreeable to that. So-
What was the cost estimate on the elevator? You got one time, right?
Well, I mean, we know it's gonna take every bit of $100,000 and probably a bit more. The one that's in the Burnsville Elementary School for the library, of course, that's been a few years ago, but it ran right at $100,000. And I just would like to say this, and then I'm gonna shut down on the elevator. But, I mean, if it needs to be done, there will always be something far more pressing. But that building is too fine a building not to have an elevator. And that's all I've got to say about that, and I've worked very hard to try to find money, and it's time we get it done and move on. And then, I mean, we cannot defer everything to down here, so it's time to smell the coffee.
And that is, whatever that elevator is at the library, it has been an excellent elevator.
Well, just think if we didn't have that elevator.
No, I
mean,
know it
how
would be.
I
limit.
don't know, Yates got stuck in it one time.
Oh, yeah, stop it.
I got this call, your kid is stuck in the elevator.
Oh, Lord, Heather, you
I mean,
did.
I just think,
What did you say?
Well,
At least I
What
know
you
where he's
gonna
at.
say?
yeah, it's good to know where he went. I wasn't missing him yet.
I wouldn't think you'd have to get, if you get an architect, they'll come with their own engineering.
Yeah.
And usually, so it would just be a matter of engaging the architect probably.
So, you know, that's another RFQ we can do. So we just, and you know, either way, we just wanted to know before we carried that money through, because I know this year's kind of been a bust with COVID and everything else.
Well, one thing about it is getting equipment up and down too. I mean, I know it, you know, when you have audio, visual and all that kind of stuff, just getting it up and down the steps at the library for
Well,
meetings and stuff.
sometimes just getting my bod up those steps,
Well, yeah,
that's my equipment.
that's true. But there's just when you, I just think it is necessary.
Well, it just.
Now, are we talking about, when you're talking about the police, at the old fire department, then when it's done, you're thinking about moving the police department and the,
Well, we have the
public-
crew, yes.
just redoing that building?
We have the crew downstairs right now, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, that's a shame and a disgrace. It's awful.
Well, I
It's
mean,
awful, and
I
I
don't
know why
usually go hang
anybody
out.
would want to work down there, and I don't know why anybody would want to come on and work there later. I mean, it is. And, you know, their space needs to be upgraded. And then upstairs is sort of, I think, what the police department had their eye on. I think they want, you know, to have a place where they can kind of all gather and
Mm-hmm.
meet,
That'd
that
be
it's
nice.
not in, and their evidence room is much better than what it once was, which is sort of back everybody's trunk, but, but it needs to
That
be
would be
more
good.
secure, and,
It was in filing cabinets and,
yeah, I mean, just strewn here
Yeah.
and.
Well, then that would give a
I wish
little
I had
more
known
room in
it
the
more like
town hall.
at one time.
We don't have to elevate them and do that.
No, I mean, we'll have to figure out financing once they came up with a design and you know, a cost estimate and that sort of thing. And then see what we could work out with them. I mean, it'd be great if we could work out the deal Jamie's worked out where, you know, he's buying materials and the county's buying materials and, they're sort of doing the labor of love.
Well, I just wanna say I strongly support the work crew having a better habitat. That's pretty sorry.
Keep their vehicles, everybody can keep their vehicles inside, and it's just better,
Yeah, I think
all the
so.
work trucks and everything.
And you have a low for that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, I mean, I think there's, you know, upstairs, there's updates. Downstairs, it just needs to all be,
Retrograding.
I just had to see that bathroom one time, and I was like, oh my God.
You can't unsee it, can
Cheese,
you?
We
cheese,
know- we
cheese
know.
wouldn't feel at home without it.
We know where COVID started. Good Lord.
hey, y'all
So,
leave cheese alone.
so,
I agree,
yeah,
Yes.
the man can work
the
in
best
any
worker
set of
around.
circumstances.
He can.
So, and then I've just talked about, you know, the energy audits we've had done, kind of put those all in up at the top, so unless you have other questions about those, but that's just kind of an ongoing project, and so far, it's not cost us a dime, so I'm excited about it. You know, we're gonna get good information that hopefully we can turn into a, you know, a plan going forward, and as things change and burn out and whatnot, we can do some switching over that will help us with our utility bills, and we're gonna figure out how many light poles we're paying for,
And as you said, if they have bulbs or
and
not.
if they're actually burning. So,
That's not something.
so, I mean, down to number 3, and that's Teresa and Jamie, we're gonna talk about that first.
Okay, I'm gonna start briefly and then I'm gonna yield to Jamie because we have, well, it's a concern I have. And, I've discussed it somewhat with Jamie as far as some guidance here. I think we will all agree that we know how wonderful, what an asset having Heather on board working 40-plus hours a week as our town administrator. And, you know, it's things have slipped through the cracks through nobody's intentional negligence, but if somebody is not attending to the shop, things do somehow get lost in the shuffle of daily living. And so I just, I know that there are people who have asked, and right now I can't even tell you what it is, I should, but I know it's a costly amount, it may seem to some people, to have a town administrator with whom we pay her to be the town administrator, and we get her legal expertise. And yes, it is a nice chunk of change, but I think who could say it is not worth it? And the money that she is, the policemen have asked me several times, I have just disappeared from town hall, they don't see me there anymore. And I said, the law, we have Heather, I don't need to be there trying to get things ready for High Country to get some of that water and sewer money, which we did do, but it's being done much better now and more efficiently. And so this leads to the point, which is that, let's just say that we all agree that she is extremely valuable, but in the event that, we all will not be here forever and we go our separate ways at some point in time, and there is a board that sits here and says, paying her how much, or maybe Heather's gone too and it's somebody else, we don't need to be spending that kind of money. And as has been told to me before, if department heads did their job, we wouldn't need Heather, but I could not disagree more. So I have asked Jamie, and we've had some good discussion about if we move towards a town manager form of government, we will always have, there's no choice. It cannot be that a town board says, we're going to table the town administrator and we're just gonna do this, let the department heads do it. Because we as a town board don't have time to do it. We're cutting off our nose to spite our face. We're what is the expression? We're being, what is it, penny?
Penny poor and pound foolish or something like that.
Or something like that. So, I would like for us to, and Jamie will talk a minute about it, but I think if we want to continue, and not that Heather's gonna leave us tomorrow, because she's got cement in her shoes, but we need to keep her and those like her who will follow her. That a board does not have, in other words, bottom line is the board does not have that choice to say, we don't really need a town administrator, but if we have a town manager, now, I understand good people come and good people go, and same about, but I just think that we need to be wise and realizing the importance that Heather has brought to us and will continue to bring to the board and to the town for all aspects of what we need to do, from economic development to quality of life issues. That if a board must always have someone there doing their job, and if they don't, then the town manager serves at the pleasure of the board. You're here one day, maybe gone the next. But I'd like for us to have some discussion about that. It's kind of like an insurance policy, that we have someone who is in charge and keeps department heads, this is not what she is obsessed with doing, but department heads have someone to come to whom they work with as we're working on our strategies and our long-term goals. And so, Jamie, I'm gonna yield to you about that process, if you don't mind, and anything else. I think you would agree, for the economic development and growth of the town, that is the wise move. The wise move has been that we have Heather, and we would like to keep that in place. And by assuring that, it's by having a town manager form of government.
Well, I guess the mayor and I had a conversation about this, which kind of grew out of, I talk about really planning and what's going on with the town, and first of all, I suppose, came out of my saying to the mayor how great it was to have Heather in the place she's in, and be able to just sit down with her and Lynn me, and we've had projects to work on, you've had all of the flavors there on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that, 2020 was, and even with COVID, we sat down together probably in March, I guess it was April. Just a group of us to say, we're gonna have to dive in and tackle it, let's see how we can handle it from an administration point of view. The town is growing and will grow. There's opportunity here for growth that will happen economically. Real estate is crazy. We're beginning to see pickup in commercial real estate, which kind of lagged behind residential real estate, but that's naturally centered in the town. And then just think about what you spend an hour and change talking about the scope of infrastructure needs that you have. One of the things that sticks out to me is that if you're, and the mayor has talked quite rightly, it's an advantage, I think, to have somebody there who can manage the department heads, but beyond that, and what I told her and told Heather, you've not really had somebody there who had the ability to plan or spend their time looking forward. I think, yes, you possibly could have department heads who did their jobs and managed the departments on a day-to-day basis. I think it's challenging, and Burnsville has grown to the point now where I think that would be all that they could do. Your public works director is not going to be able to sit and think looking forward and think about, if I balance the needs of the money that we need in public works, how does that affect the police department, affect the fire department, those types of things. And really I would say, and Heather had mentioned to me that you guys might be looking at this item B here, future personnel planning. And this is just my opinion, from where I sit, but I think it would at least behoove the council, if you do personnel planning, looking at your departments and your staff up and down the board, that you should at least have a conversation about looking at a manager form of government. There's great stability there, I think, that can be had. And I think that moving forward, Burnsville's not going to get any, we hope, smaller than what it is. And things aren't going to get any less complex either. I think there's a lot of, Heather will tell you, looking at she's thinking about saving time for herself because she's so busy by doing an on-call RFQ for engineers, just so you wouldn't be busy project in, project out, trying to do that on a repeated basis because you've got so many other things to do as well. I also think that if you consider that, the statutes are very specific about what councils can delegate to their manager to do. And you can tailor that. You can give them hiring and firing authority by resolution or not. You can give them authority over leasing up to a certain point or not. You still have flexibility there. But I think that, from my point of view at least, what I shared with the mayor, what I told her I would be happy to share with you, is that I think for the sake of the community development of the town and economic development, it would behoove, or I would at least urge the council to consider what conversion to a manager's form of government would look like. There are many towns much smaller than Burnsville, I think, who have managers and don't need them, or maybe aren't as in need of them as Burnsville is. And I would think that Heather has demonstrated the usefulness of having a chief executive in an administrator's position. Now granted, I will say that has a lot to do with the individual in that position too, and not just the position.
You have to leave.
But I think it would, I would at least urge you to consider thinking about it, particularly if you're going to look at doing, future personnel planning and sort of a comprehensive look at it. That's just my 2 cents, and you can't buy this cup of coffee with it, but I did tell the mayor I'd be happy to share our conversation with you guys.
Well, I really see it as an insurance policy more or less, that we always have someone. If they're not, worth their salt, they go, but I mean that there has to be that person in that position to keep us focused on where we're going and how we're gonna get there, and it's not left to chance, I guess, for the lack of a better word. And I feel that having Heather so far has been a godsend, and I would never want to see us not have someone in a position which she is in, that it must always be there, whether this board, tomorrow's board doesn't like it, but they have no choice if we've adopted it. We have to have someone in charge and helping to work with agencies like Jamie and state agencies she stays on the phone so much with as you can see from tonight's conversation, of all these people down in Raleigh to call. What times I did before we got her, I know Judy and I made a trip to Boone to get things moving, but her contacts have been far more vast than mine, and she's very thorough, and it's a learning curve of trying to figure out who is where and what do they do, and they can answer this. So I just think it behooves us to, if we don't plan, then we don't get. And I just, would like you all to think about it, that we need to think about it, because it is the future. We don't have to take action on it tonight if you have any questions or thoughts, but I would like, after discussion and questions, to put it on an agenda in a few months, and let's kind of nail it down, the pros and the cons. But I just, as we all move on in different directions, that we've left behind a plan that what we certainly will look back with pride, that we got our act together and got organized and looked at the challenges that we needed and delegated to someone who's responsible like Heather, and we want that to continue. We don't know who's going to be here tomorrow, but I'm not saying there will be bad people sitting on the board, but I don't think it should not be left to choice. It is something we have mandated, that this is our future, and we want someone capable to lead us.
Well, I know ever since COVID hit, I've just been so thankful. I thought if we as a board had to deal with this, even with you as an experienced mayor, it would have been a full-time job. I don't know how we would have, and with the sewer, the wastewater, and the fresh water, all the problems that seemed to come at once. I've thought to
It was a
myself,
full-time
how would
job.
we ever?
Why?
I said it was a full-time job, wasn't it?
Well,
How would we ever
the
have dealt
policemen
with
have
all of
missed
it?
me. I'm glad they have, but
And I've thought it just would have been, but we had the town administrator, whose job it was to coordinate everything, to see the legalities of everything, even if she hadn't been an attorney, but thank the Lord she was, but who knew who to contact, and who did contact, and who was there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week and more. But I have been so grateful that we made the move we did, when we did, because it came just in the nick of time as far as I was concerned, and left us, just in advisory capacities. I just think it was,
well,
I've just been ever so grateful, and I don't see how any board really can, I would hate to think that that anyone would make a decision just to do away with that position, not knowing what we've all now know,
What we went through.
that it would be very foolhardy. And if it takes, morphing that into a managerial position instead of that of administrator, we should certainly seriously look into it.
I don't know how we'd have made it without her this year.
I
mean,
just
from the
cannot-
fire
Gosh, y'all,
department,
I mean, really, I just feel like I need to like leave the room or something. I hate this stuff.
I mean,
But I'm just gonna say this.
We'll get on our knees.
I think, and I do think staff would agree,
We
and
should.
not because I'm here, but it may not, I mean, it ended up being me. I may not have been actually the best choice. Y'all needed somebody with a lot more experience in water and sewer. But,
Really?
This is how you get it.
that's right.
but, yeah, I've learned a whole lot. I was in my class today, my leadership class at the School of Government, and that's what I told them. I said I had no clue. And I've learned so much. And my family's tired of me talking about pipes and noticing manholes when we're walking around places and stuff like that. But I think it is a position that is needed. Now, I'm not here to advocate for myself to be the manager of the town of Burnsville, but I think one way or another, whether you keep it as an administrator or whether you move it to a manager's position, which I know is a statutory issue, I think that it's good to have somebody who's there every day and who the staff feels like they can come to and say, we don't know what to do. And sometimes I look at them and say, what do we do? But I think it's been good for them to feel like there was somebody that they could ask, like, how we solve this problem, or, hey, I've got this idea, let me run it by you, what do you think? That kind of thing. And I think that every community around ours, not to say we have to be like anybody else, but has that person. And I think whether it's me or y'all pick somebody else, I'm not saying there's a lot I haven't done this before now, so there are definitely people who are probably
Well, the
more qualified that are out there.
The league
But-
recommends it. And
But,
we were
I mean,
told that we were one of the few that does not, when I went for my training, when I first came on the board, and we were together at that, we were told we were one of the few that does not have that form of government, and that they do recommend it. At the very least, they said, get an administrator. But they really feel that the managerial form of government is the preferred.
Well, I
form of
know
government.
that the state used to have money and departments that provided a whole lot of technical assistance for free to communities our size. And that seems to have gone away. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but I mean,
think you're
commerce
right.
is gone,
It has
know.
gone away and it will continue to go away because as you see, in North Carolina continue to grow, the emphasis will continue to be on the urban areas as they get more representation in the state government. So that you have this right, the ability that you used to have. And there are entire organizations that are gone. I mean, Advantage West is gone, doesn't exist anymore. You know, those people who were advocates for smaller communities, you just don't find them in state government now.
And so when you're looking for, as a board, somebody to advise you on something, it's just not there on a day-to-day kind of basis anymore. It's, I don't know, I do a call with, Western North Carolina, well, it's managers. I'm the only administrator, but, that, I can't think of any community, any county, certainly not any county that doesn't have a manager. And most of the towns that are on the calls, whether it's, Mills River or Fletcher or
Biltmore Forest.
Biltmore Forest, I mean, Spruce Pine, Bakersfield.
Seven Devils has a
Seven
manager.
Devils, yeah, I mean, and like I said, I think that an administrator can do everything a manager can do. I mean, y'all set that up. And you can give them whatever authority you want to. But the one thing an administrator doesn't have is, that's been pointed out, you can make that position just go away.
You know, pragmatically, if you were going to continue to pay somebody to be an administrator, I guess, you know, and I'm just thinking about it in pragmatic terms, why would you not consider making that position a manager's position so you have the benefit of the insulation by the statute between the council and your constituency? And also, it's not like you know, statute says there are 3 people you can fire at the drop of a hat, your attorney, your clerk, and your manager. You know, the board's not really giving its ability to, so, 1, 2, 3. Those at will employees, but, so you know, I don't see the council, you know, really abrogating its control over that, but I think that there is a layer of, there can be, you know, it's very handy for councils, politically speaking, to have somebody there who's a buffer between decisions that you guys have to make about policy and the public. So-
Well, it's not something that a mayor can take on. I mean, if you think back, the times that I wished to pursue something, of course, I was glad to ask your approval, because I had to do that, but, I mean, it's just, well, it's just good, responsible government, and, I think we'd like to leave it better than we found it. It doesn't mean that there's gonna be many more Heathers to follow. We hope there will be when she says, oh, I'm going home. But, you know, you do have that, comfort button that, you know, you can hire and fire the manager at will if they're not doing their job. You know, it doesn't mean they go away for good and the board can just do as they please. That person has to be replaced. We will always have somebody connecting the pearls. So I just, you know, would like for you all to think about it, and we can discuss it more further, and put it on the agenda soon to be voted on. I mean, how do the rest of you think? We've not heard from you,
I would really like to consider this, because I do think too, like Heather's done so much to organize and do so many things that aren't always, you know, you don't know that needs to be done.
Right.
And she has discovered them and figured it out. And what I'm concerned is too, is that if it doesn't become a permanent position, then another, you know, in the future, a board can come in and go, well, you know, things are running smooth and thanks so much, we really don't need you. And then it could be easily backtrack into disarray.
well, you know, you think about poor Dylan and I mean, if he were totally responsible for trying to locate these money piles that we want to get our hands into and the paperwork, I mean, he's too busy doing his job to be administrative in this particular venue, so I just think it's good.
Yes.
Bunny, we've heard from you. Judy, how do you feel?
I just have no words.
Are you speechless?
I am speechless. No,
Well, take your bow, Heather.
Probably.
the one thing that I would not wanna do is, lose Heather, so.
Well, I'm not, look, I didn't come by for this.
No, she's not.
I'm not saying that. I'm happy where I'm at, and I'm not saying that, I feel like I can work with pretty much anybody. I've gotten a lot better about that in my old age. I've learned to let a lot of things slide off my back, you know, and I do love this town. It's my hometown. I've got a lot of history here. And I hope that when I go, whenever that is, whether somebody kicks me out the door or I decide to go, that there's somebody that's left in charge, and connecting the dots is a big thing. I think we've seen this with our water and sewer issues, is that as there's been turnover, but there's been nobody who knew kind of all along and left a record of what's gone on. And that's, you know, we've backtracked. I told Russell, I said, Chad found a report that was done back in 2003, and I was like, oh my gosh, we got all this stuff to do too. And luckily I was able to sit down with Shane today and say, you know, have we done this? Have we done that? And he went through different things and told me what we had done, what we hadn't done, and, you know, but there's just not been that continuity that I think you need to have.
Well, I wanna say that.
I mean, you need it in every department, you know, but you need it at the top too.
We did not come to Heather and say, don't you wanna be town manager? We just, Jamie and I had the discussion, and Heather, you know, she just listened in, and, I mean, it's, as she says, it's the will of the board. Russell, I was gonna come to you last but not least.
I think we could find a much better replacement than the current one. Everybody else has praised her.
Let me have it.
I'm all for it. I mean, I think no matter what that salary is, I think it takes care of itself. You know, in her job, she's gonna save or gain us money. I mean, if she's done her job correctly, it's gonna pay for itself.
Well, and my thing is, I've got to have, I'm not making a decision tonight.
Well,
Well,
Do a
like-
little research.
You know,
it will
the-
not be
the-
on the agenda till later, but I just think it's time we start maybe talking about it.
Denise and I work every day. I mean, you guys don't go to work every day, but you can't be there every day. I mean, that's just something you can't do, and I think it's much needed to have someone that Leslie can go to, that Chad can go to, that Niles can go to. I just think it's very important to have that person. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I appreciate everything she's done thus far, and her and Jamie worked really good together, and
Yes,
we
yours.
were fortunate to get her.
Well, I
Yes.
continue to be
Yes.
amazed at all the times I stumble up on their meetings. I mean, the two of them are constantly in good consultation. So, for the town's benefit.
What good it does us,
Think
right?
it's added, right?
So
Yeah.
in other words, a future board could dissolve the job of administrator, but
Yeah.
they could not dissolve the job of manager.
No.
No,
Once
because
you
it's
change
a
your
whole
form of
form of
government,
government.
Danny, from mayor council
Yeah,
to council manager,
mhm.
then it stays that way.
And do we have to change our charter or something? Was that, we do, we have to do
There's a
something.
statute that you
Yeah, we have to do
have to go
something,
through
don't
the
we?
process.
Something legal.
Mhm.
You have to do something legal.
Well, I would like to suggest that, you know, questions that, as you think about it, we individually think about it, that we direct them or chair them to Jamie, who will get back and. Well,
Are you on the payroll, Jamie?
No, I'm not paying him.
No, that's fine. I don't want another 1099.
well, I mean, Jamie is very thorough and he, I mean, by the time that we put it on the agenda, you know, we all think about it in questions. That way, we're directing to a rather neutral source. This is not someone that's on the board, and it's not Heather, who doesn't know the answer, can find it for us.
I'll tell you right now, I don't know the answer.
Is that a long process, just out of curiosity?
No, you just
It
Gotta
isn't,
change the charter.
there's no, I don't know, I don't think that it has to change it. I mean, you don't have to get a local act or anything like that, it's just there's a statutory procedure.
And
There's probably a public hearing.
if we did decide to do the manager, would you still be able to be town attorney?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's where your rubber hits the road, when you have to get both. In either situation though, you know?
But if we lost you, then we'd have to get both, unless we hired an attorney. To be the manager.
You know, yeah,
Well, not me probably,
Or
because
if
you'll
you
be here
could-
long after I'm gone, but.
yes, I mean, they can be, what the school government told me, and they're actually, there's a county down on the coast. Dare County, I believe, that their
That's one.
county attorney is also their county manager. So you can, because both answer to the board. So there's not a conflict. It's not like I'm supervising myself as manager, supervising the attorney. Both answer to the board. But it's, you know, obviously, if you split my salary in half, you're paying half for your attorney and half for, and somewhere in there, you're paying for a tax collector. So,
Well, I would like to suggest, if Jamie doesn't mind, that before, we haven't decided when we'll put it on the agenda, but there'll be enough time for us to think. If you don't mind, if you would just personally poll the board members at your convenience to find out what questions they have, so we can, and that way, it's not any one of us polling the board or Heather, but it would be you. Do you mind to do that, Jamie? To see what questions they need
If
answered?
that's the pleasure of the council, I'll do that, sure.
Well, I understand it. I think I understand it. I don't think I've got any questions for you, so.
Well, I mean, you may have a good night's sleep and have one.
I doubt it. I've not had a good night's sleep lately, so. And that's not gonna keep me awake, I can tell you that.
Well, anyway, maybe if Jamie can just do a quick poll of us close to the time that we know it's gonna be on the agenda. And that
Is
way,
that legal?
you could poll, yeah.
well, I mean,
Why would it not be?
you can't take a vote.
No,
You
no,
just have
no,
to-
we just-
No, she's talking about seeking out if there's anything
I-
Yeah, I mean,
Can I
wants
offer an
included.
alternative to
Yeah.
No,
that?
I
Instead
think
of
that-
polling?
No, I think you just call to say, well, Russell, do you have any questions you want me to look into before you make a decision?
I was gonna suggest perhaps I just do a summary of what the process would look like and send that to council. And
Okay.
then if they have questions after having looked at
They
things.
contact you, how about that? Okay. Are we all kinda okay with that?
Are you talking about like maybe a job description kind of thing? This is what the manager does?
Well, I think we kinda,
Well, the job description is pretty much in the statute.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, then maybe we could see that.
well, Jamie will send you the information.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you have questions, we'll take care of it before we come down to the wire. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
It is now about
Good idea.
7:45.
Yeah, we've gone way over these
She's
other
gonna be the
things.
manager, she's gonna have to do a better job on that.
Managing
That's
time, I mean, it says
Agenda.
time manager, I had time on there, for all of that was
Them
supposed to be 30
hamburgers were
minutes.
good, let's keep going.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
well-
mean, the other stuff, when Dylan's back, we can talk about the APWA stuff, cause we've been looking at that together. And then again, you know, Leslie and I just talked, there's a slew of people that in the next 10 years will be ready to skate on out. And we wanna put together some ideas about how to market ourselves to potential new employees in different departments.
Okay.
And so, but that can wait, we can stop it here.
Well, before I ask that we adjourn, Russell, I know you have enjoyed being in and out of that bag all night long.
Mhm.
I love
So if you
McDonald's
don't,
fries.
so a mask would have been useless, but do you mind next time to wear a mask? We all wear masks. Okay,
I'll let you know.
no, you just,
I'm not being smart.
well, I'm not
At
being
all.
smart either. I mean, what worries me is not so much the virus anymore, it's the variants that are gonna come at us. At any rate, I feel like we've had a good discussion. Jamie, thank you for joining us, and Niles, you as well. And if there's no objection, I'll declare us adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sounds good.